Alright, speech number 2, persuasive speech. Now, based on my previous speech, I think it's obvious what my persuasive speech is going to be on, that being why all drugs, should be legal. But this being a college campus, I'm sure most of you are already on board with this, so I decided to challenge myself with this speech and also convince you that racism is not real and capitalism is the best economic system in the world. Now, obviously, racism is real. I just said that for the hook, but I feel especially now in this political climate, any issue, even the slightest racial component, is turned into a race issue, which is especially true when discussing the war on drugs. And I feel that by doing this, the real issues are usually missed in an effort to be overly sympathetic. When talking about the war on drugs, you tend to get into the issue of policing, police actions, which ultimately leads you down the road of police brutality and Black Lives Matter versus Blue Lives Matter, yada yada, which ultimately ends in a pointless emotional fueled debate void of any concrete policy changes that will actually help those who are disenfranchised. The reason the civil rights movement was so successful is because they actually pushed for policy changes such as the Civil Rights Act and the Voters' Rights Act, which shifted the power from those doing the oppressing to the oppressed. If we want to see similar results today, we have to be specific on what we're fighting for, and I see no better example than the abusive system of power than the war on drugs. Now, who are the entities doing the abusing? One of which is the private prison industry, started in 1980 to deal with the overpopulation as a result of the overpopulation in prisons as a result of the drug war. Now, these prisons have an enormous political presence in Washington and have funneled $10 million to political candidates and spent $25 million in lobbying efforts since 1989, according to the Washington Post. This creates a huge incentive for a large percentage of these profits being from drug offenders and repeat drug offenders, which, perpetuates the cycle of catch and release, which also highly incentivizes. This influence trickles down from wardens to judges to police chiefs all the way down to individual police officers, which now have a massive incentive to bust people with drugs and violent crimes related to drugs, with the easiest targets being black youth in inner cities, with 48% of incarcerations in prisons being due to drug-related crimes, with 36% being African American, according to the data from the Bureau of Prisons.gov. Now, it's important to note that this is not because of any inherent racism on the part of the police, or even the system itself is inherently racist, but because of several different socioeconomic factors, all of which are most certainly stemmed from past racism. But I think it's important to note that this is not perpetuated by racism. It's a cause from past racism, i.e. slavery leading to blacks needing to stemming from the ending of slavery, meaning unskilled black workers needed to find work in factories in inner cities, and because of racism could not advance through normal capitalistic means and had to stay locked in the inner cities while whites moved to the suburbs. And as poverty and crime increased, so did police presence. And now that we have this cycle of now that we have the drug war, the easiest targets for it are unfortunately these black youths in the inner cities. Another major oppressive entity is the pharmaceutical companies, which spent $25 million in lobbying efforts just last year, which according to Pharmaceutical Technologies. And the reason that they have such a vested interest in keeping drugs illegal is pretty simple, really. It's just because they don't have the patents to the illegal drugs, because they're illegal, and it's just cheaper for them to keep them illegal rather than pursuing these patents. So now, as I said before, capitalism is the best economic system in the world, and based on these, two corporate entities, it's pretty easy. I mean, you'd think that capitalism is the worst thing. That's kind of part of the problem, which definitely is. This kind of corporatism is definitely a symptom of capitalism, which stems most people, especially in the drug community, to want to romanticize socialism and communism. Now, that's a bad idea for several reasons I don't have time to get into right now, as we're already at 5 minutes, but I'll use this analogy to kind of make you see my point. If there's a leak in your roof, a normal person would hire a contractor to fix the roof and maybe improve upon it so it doesn't leak again. A communist would burn the house down, hire 10 contractors to build 10 houses for each member of your family. 5 of the contractors would starve to death building the houses, and 5 of your family members would freeze to death in the winter because they were not properly insulated. That's kind of went off on a tangent there, but basically what I'm saying is corporatism like this is the natural occurrence of capitalism, and it's the primary role of the government to identify these issues and come up with solutions that open the markets, in this instance legalizing drugs, so that new drug markets can be formed independent of the major pharmaceutical companies, while also simultaneously destroying the illegal drug market and facilitated by gangs and drug cartels, which lead to so many unnecessary deaths in this country. But at the end of the day, institutional racism and capitalism aside, the war on drugs is simply an issue of freedom. In a country where alcohol is legal, guns are legal, skydiving is legal, marriage is legal, divorce is legal, drugs should be legal too, because if used properly, they are way safer and a lot more fun than all of those things combined. All right, thank you.